to, you might as well just go under the kitchen sink and grab the Drano and turn it up, because what's the difference? I don't understand why people want to put this stuff in their body. But on the right, some of the equipment used to manufacture methamphetamine. I've seen all of those things in the meth labs that I've been in, unfortunately. For the city, me and another one of the detectives are certified lab technicians, and usually there's a lab in the city of Morristown, him or I or both of us are involved in it. So over the years I've seen all that stuff, but I almost always see coffee filters, tubing, electrical tape. You always got to have some type of container. A lot of time mason jars are always seen. Also, the one pot method is kind of the new biggest thing. It's probably the most prevalent method right now, and they're using Gatorade bottles to manufacture it. Most of the time you can use a Mountain Dew bottle or whatever, but they like the Gatorade bottles because the walls of the bottles are so much thicker in the Gatorade bottles. It's less likely to explode on them. So that's why they use those. Effects of methamphetamine on the brain, short term. Initially you're going to have a euphoric, wonderful, intense rush, then agitation, violent behavior, impaired judgment, risky behavior. Long term, you're looking at addiction, obviously a higher tolerance, irritability, confusion, sleeplessness is a big one, aggressive behavior, psychotic behavior, and paranoia. Effects on the body in the short term, again, that euphoric feeling of pleasure, boost of energy, increased heart rate and blood pressure. In long term, the deterioration of brain activity, reduced motor skills, convulsions, heart problems, anorexia, and hyperthermia, which of course is increased body temperature. These are kind of just an example of what methamphetamine can do to you. This lady on the left, this was a difference of 2.5 years. Didn't take long, for her to reach that point because of methamphetamine. The young man on the right, that's only 7 months from that first picture to that second picture. Does anybody notice anything about these pictures?
They're both mug shots.
They're both mug shots, sure, yeah.
Scabs.
Scabs,
Both look older. Color.
loss of weight, color. Anything else? They've aged. They look like they've aged a lot. Tell you what I always notice when I stand back and look at those pictures, look at the before and after eyes.
You see they're kind of more.
You see how they just kind of lost life? It's just kind of gone. It's just left them. We talk about the scabs. You've heard of meth bugs. Those aren't bugs at all. Basically, when you put things like muriatic acid, acetone, things like that into your body, the human body's not made to metabolize those chemicals. So we have to get them out somehow. We have to get rid of that stuff, flush it out. So what our body does is it secretes it through the pores of our skin. Well, as you can imagine, if you're secreting byproducts of things like acetone, muriatic acid, it's going to have a sensation on your skin. It's either going to make you itch, make your skin crawl, something like that. So a lot of your meth addicts are continually scratching. I've seen those scabs on arms, faces, chest, legs. I've seen them all over the body. Another thing with the scabs is a lot of true methamphetamine addicts will eat their scabs because their scabs actually contain minuscule amounts of methamphetamine. They will also, true methamphetamine addict will drink their own urine for the same reason. It has minuscule amounts of methamphetamine in it. A lot of the hardcore cooks, they'll use their own urine in the next manufacturing process because it contains that little bit of methamphetamine in it. So you really reached an all-time low when you become a meth addict. I want to add this. Does Because when we talk about these illicit drugs, one of the presentations I gave at Walker State, there was a lady who had actually was a recovering addict. I think when I was in there, she was 10 years clean, but she'd used, abused, and been addicted to cocaine, methamphetamine. I think she even used some heroin. And she was very forthcoming and talked a lot about the things that were going on in her life during that time. And it really kind of validated this presentation for me. I've never used cocaine or methamphetamine or any of that stuff, so I don't know what it feels like. I read, I do research, and I put this stuff up here and tell you guys this is what it does. But she actually validated this whole presentation. We talked about, I said, okay, cocaine, has anybody used cocaine in the room? She raised her hand. What did it do? She told me all about it. Before we even got into the slides, it's the exact same thing she was saying. So it validated this presentation for me, knowing that it's the truth, that what you're seeing up here is actually going on, all the things that we talked about. So, let's see if this will work. All right, that was not one play either. There's a couple of small short stories there. One young lady, it talks about how methamphetamine addicts kind of fixate on something, and it's usually everybody's got their own thing. She picked at her face almost continually. She picked at her face, had these nasty sores on her face. She just said that was her thing. That's what she did. There was another guy that actually, he was convinced that somebody had implanted a computer chip under his toenail of his big toe. So he actually took a pair of needle nose pliers and jammed it under his toenail and yanked his toenail. They'll fixate on things. They fix things a lot. They focus on fixing things, taking things apart, fixing things. There's one guy that was interviewed that he said that he was actually awake for 4 weeks without sleep. He said, "What in the world did you do for 4 weeks?" And he said, "Well, I've got 4 complete vehicles in parts in my front and backyard." He took apart 4 vehicles. He didn't have any kind of mechanic skills whatsoever. He said he'd never get them put back together. He don't know how to put them back together, but he took them apart. A lot of meth addicts, when they get high, they'll like take VCRs apart, TVs apart, try to fix things. Some of them clean their room, clean their house. That's all they do, clean. You know, and you got the ones that pick their faces, but it definitely causes a problem. We talked about, somebody mentioned Molly before. Molly is becoming a lot more popular now. You know, Molly basically is ecstasy, MDMA. It was really big back in the 80s. And then it kind of took a downturn and we didn't see a whole lot of it. It was there the whole time, but didn't see a lot of it, but recently it's made a comeback. So it's a pure form. It's the purest form of MDMA or ecstasy. It's usually in powder form. Should be white in color in its purest form, but it can also be beige or yellowish brown. Stimulant, psychedelic, makes the user feel very, very relaxed and have a feeling of euphoria. That's what it looks like in the pure powder form. But probably the way it's being sold here is in capsules. They take the powder and they put it inside capsules, and that's how it's being sold. Usually at this point in the presentation, I always tell the group, unless it's your prescription medication out of your bottle from your pharmacy, or Tylenol, Advil, or over-the-counter drug that you purchased yourself at the grocery store, if somebody hands you a pill, you have no idea what it is. There is no telling what that could be. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later too. Majority of the Molly users are between the ages of 16 and 24. They often refer to using the drug with I know Molly or popping Molly, and they may ask questions like, have you seen Molly, or can you help me find Molly, when they're looking for the drug. But this is what the reason for the big comeback. A lot of musical entertainers have started referring to Molly in their songs, and that's kind of what we've contributed to the comeback of Molly recently. People like Jay-Z, Madonna, Miley Cyrus, you all may know plenty of others. Usually the people out in the group know a lot more than I do about who's singing about it. If this works.
Raves are making a comeback, and along with them, dangerous drugs that some kids think are actually safe. One of them, the pure form of ecstasy called Molly. It's growing in popularity and getting even more attention now after something Madonna said in a recent concert. Tonight, how easy it is to get and why Molly can kill.
She's beautiful.
Brittany Chambers was a good kid, honor roll, worked at a daycare center, volunteered, a sophomore at Desert Mountain High School.
She cared deeply about people and animals.
It was her 16th birthday. A friend offered her ecstasy.
She started seizing when we got in the ambulance. When we got to the hospital, they said they needed to put her in a coma to make sure that she didn't have any brain swelling.
Brittany never woke up. She died from water intoxication, drinking so much because of the overwhelming thirst caused by the drug.
You lose a child and you have to figure out how to get out of bed. If breathing were automatic, we would stop breathing because it's that painful to be alive.
Brittany's mom, Marcy, now runs Rose House outside of Denver, a drug treatment center named for Brittany Rose Chambers. 10 years after her daughter's death, Marcy finds herself raising awareness again. Police and drug experts say raves are back. This one in Phoenix just last weekend. And so is the drug that often fuels them, Molly, the street name for the pure form of ecstasy called MDMA. In March, Madonna asked a crowd at a concert if they had seen Molly. The crowd went wild. And studies from the last 3 years show kids are seeing and using, up 66% in Arizona, blowing away the national average.
We kind of call it generational forgetfulness.
Shelley Mowry with Drug Free AZ says ecstasy use dropped in the mid-2000s, but kids coming of age are discovering it once again.
This is a new group of teens that maybe hasn't been educated on what are the harms of using ecstasy.
The solution to the experts, talking with your kids. And for Marcy Chambers, the message should be simple and blunt.
If you take this, then there is a chance that you're going to die. And there's no question about that. There's a chance that you're going to die.
So back to that comment with Madonna, she didn't get away with just saying this. There was a lot of criticism.
Yeah, a couple of biggest names in electronic dance music came down pretty hard on her. She later claimed that it was a reference to a song in her album, but the album title, MDNA, keep in mind Molly is typically referred to as MDMA, so make the judgment for
But
yourself.
and the song itself that you referred to is about drugs, so whether
Yeah, have you
you
seen
refer to
Molly?
it or roundabout, you're still referring to it. Oh,
All right, any questions or comments about Molly or ecstasy? You saw in the video, it does also come in tablet form, usually in an odd shape and multicolored, and usually has some kind of fun design on it, dolphins or rainbows or all kinds of different things can be on it. Any questions or comments about Molly? All right, the big one, prescription prescription medication. I want to spend a little bit of time here because it's probably the most important thing that I'm going to talk to you about today. Here in our area and generally across the southeast United States, everything I'm going to say is going to be true. Most commonly abused prescription drugs that we see, number one is OxyContin, which is the brand name. Oxycodone is its base form or generic form. So oxycodone is actually OxyContin. It's just OxyContin is the brand name. Oxycodone, Roxyceps, Roxycodone, Percocets are also oxycodone. All your oxycodone-based products are probably the most abused right now, but we're getting close on a couple of others. So, Opana, who's heard of Opana? I'm not taking names, you can raise your hand. Opana is relatively new, it's probably come out in the last 3 years. Opana, again, is just a brand name. It's actually oxymorphone. Morphine has kind of always been here. It's never went away. We've never seen any great reduction or great increase in morphine. It's just kind of always been a baseline drug. It's always been there. Hydrocodone, of course, Xanax, which is anti-anxiety. And Soma is a muscle relaxer, and then Suboxone is the big new one that's become extremely popular. We talk about scheduling of drugs. The government schedules drugs based on whether they have a medicinal purpose and the propensity for abuse or addiction. So a Schedule 1 drug is the highest scheduled drug. That drug has no medicinal value whatsoever and has a high potential for addiction. So Schedule 1 drugs are going to be things like PCP, LSD, mushrooms, things like that. Your Schedule 2 drugs, as far as illicit drugs go, are going to be your cocaine, methamphetamine. Prescription drugs, oxycodone products, morphine, your Opana, oxymorphone products, all of those things fit in your Schedule 2. Schedule 3 are going to be your hydrocodone and Valium, things like that. Schedule 4, Xanax or alprazolam is its generic form. Also, just about all of your sleep aids, your Lunesta and Ambien and things like that are under Schedule 4s. Only Schedule 5 I've ever dealt with in my 14 and a half years was a cough syrup containing codeine. And then Suboxone is a Schedule 3 drug. We'll talk about each of them a little bit. I'll see if this video works. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I want to play a little bit of it and have you pick up on a couple of things mentioned.
Every 19 minutes, someone overdoses from one of these, the majority now being prescription drugs. Created to help us, not hurt us, prescription medicines are being misused and abused at an alarming rate. The cause? Experts say it's a combination of reasons, but topping the list is an overall shift in the way we look at and treat prescription medicines that has turned their misusage into such an epidemic.
Of the overdoses of the prescription drugs that have occurred, more than 75% of those people who overdose admit that they get medications from friends and family, not for prescriptions that were prescribed or medications prescribed specifically for them. So the intent is really part of the problem. People are sharing their medications because they care about people. They don't want them to be hurt. They don't want them to be stressed. And in our general population, people believe that prescription drugs are safe because they are prescribed by a practitioner and there are minimum risks for that, otherwise they wouldn't be prescribed. And that's a fallacy because any drug, no matter how simple, even over the counters, have significant risks.
Dr. Mike O'Neill is no stranger to this issue. As a clinical pharmacist for over 20 years, his expertise is also used within the DEA and the U.S. Attorney's Office, where he serves as a consultant on prescription drug diversion and abuse. Knowing the ins and outs of human behavior as it relates to prescription drug usage, he feels that the drugs aren't the problem, rather the cultures surrounding them.
And in our culture, people want a pill for everything. That is the trend in society today, for just about everything. You can't sleep, you take a pill. You can't stay awake, take a pill. You're hurt, you take a pill. We want immediate cessation of any stress or pain now. And that's not realistic, and it's definitely not healthy. We have got to change the comfort level that people have with prescription medications.
If we're taking them on a daily basis, they're going to be accessible to us on a daily basis, right there, where we could take a glass of water on the top of our kitchen counters. So people coming into our home now have access to prescriptions that they may be abusing. So now that accessibility becomes an issue. So what do we do with those drugs? Do we have to hide them? Do we have to secure them more properly? And I think the answer is yes. We need to secure those drugs.
Additionally, leftover or unused prescriptions account for almost 30% of the overall medications being abused in the United States.
One of the bigger groups abusing prescription drugs are our 12 and 13-year-olds. And these are the kids that are around the house, that are in everybody else's home, in their neighbor's home, in their coach's home, in their friend's house. And with the pills laying around, unfortunately, statistics are telling us that this is where this younger population now are getting their drugs.
Being aware of the following behaviors can dramatically change current cultures and begin to control this epidemic. Sharing drugs is dangerous and illegal. Store prescription medicines out of sight and out of common access areas for children and teenagers. Learn proper disposal methods when throwing away leftover or unused medication.
They do save millions of lives every day, whether for blood pressure or diabetes or depression or anxiety. There will always be a need to use these medications. The issue is using the medications appropriately. We have to teach the balance of appropriate prescribing, appropriate medication use, concerned with the diseases that they have in respect of these drugs.
The more informed we are about the medicines we bring into our home,
So kind of what I wanted you to pick up on there just a little bit was kind of where we are as a society. We don't put the respect into the prescription medications because same thing with alcohol. Why? It's legal. It's legal. And because we think a doctor prescribed it, that it's okay. It's medicine. Like it says, we leave it on the kitchen counter, we leave it next to the toaster. It's not in the medicine cabinet. It's definitely not locked up, or we wouldn't have the problems we have. But then also, as a society, we've gotten to the point, can't sleep, take a pill. Can't stay awake, take a pill. You're in pain, take a pill. So we've kind of lost all respect. I mean, the human race got along for millions and millions of years without prescription medication before. Like you said, they do save lives every day, and they have a purpose. But we have to learn to respect prescription medication to its full potential on what it can do, but also how harmful that it can be to us and our families and our lives. I put these pictures up here just to kind of give an example. These are Roxy's on the left. It's just kind of one of the more popular ones that we've seen around the streets of Morristown. We call these A215s for obvious reasons. It's got an A and a 215 imprinted on one side. That's a 30 milligram Roxy. They also call them cars. They'll call them R's. They'll call them berries or blueberries. It's been called a lot of different things. The list goes on and on. But here's what I talked about earlier. Depending on what pharmaceutical company makes it, it could be any shape, it could be any size, it could be any color, and it can have any markings on it. So there's literally probably 20 to 30, maybe even more, different pills that are 30 milligram Roxys that have the same oxycodone product in it, but there's 20 or 30 different versions of it. So that's why I say you just don't know what you've got unless it's your prescription or you bought it over the counter at the store. Anybody have any idea what 130 milligram Roxy goes for on the streets today? 35? 35. We're buying them for 30 for quite a long time, probably for about a year now. They've gone up. They're about $35
$35 for one deal?
for 130 milligram. Opana, or oxymorphone on the right. Most people call those OPs, or they'll call them moons, and that's because of the crescent-shaped imprint on one side of them. That's what I've heard them called more recently, more than anything else, is moons. Anybody know what, say, a 40 milligram Opana goes for on the street? 40 milligram Opana sells for $65. One 40 milligram pill. Opana is the strongest pain relieving product available in tablet form on the streets today. So that's why it's a little more expensive. That's also, between these two, is what's causing all of our overdose problems that we're having. And we'll talk more about that. Picture of Suboxone tablets on the left and the strips on the right. Suboxone strips have become extremely prevalent in our community and in our area. The Suboxone strip is just like the Listerine strips you buy at the convenience store. Stick them on your tongue, it dissolves, makes your breath smell good. Well, the Suboxone strips looks just like a Listerine strip, except it's got a N8 on it, for depending on what milligram it is. Put it on your tongue, it dissolves, and then the active drug is released into your bloodstream. So, very dangerous, because if you handle a Suboxone strip with your bare skin, you can actually absorb the active drug through your skin. So you gotta be careful with Suboxone strips. Anybody know what one Suboxone strip sells for? 25, 30, somewhere around there. Subutex is also Suboxone in a tablet form, but it has, Subutex is actually made for pregnant women to use. Actually, Subutex, most recently, we paid $40 for a Subutex tablet, which is too much in my opinion. But it should be around 25, 30. Everybody know what Suboxone is?
That's how they use detox like that?
Yeah, it's like, everybody's heard of the methadone clinics. It's methadone, but it's like just a level lower. It's not quite as strong as methadone. The methadone clinics, you have to go to the clinic on a daily basis to get your daily dose. The Suboxone clinics, you don't have to go every day. But it's a drug to help you get off drugs, if that makes any sense. I guess theoretically, it could work. I don't know that I've ever seen it work out of the hundreds or thousands of people that I know that have done
It's
it.
just another look for me to go through.
Stopped a guy one day that we've actually put in prison twice since I've been in narcotics. And he had a prescription for Suboxone. And I asked him, I said, how long you been out of prison? He said, 3 months. I said, what in the world do you have a prescription for Suboxone for? Were you high on drugs the whole time you were in prison? Is it that? No, man, I was clean. I didn't use any drugs at all in prison. I said, well, why do you need a prescription for Suboxone then? You know what his response was? It helps me to keep from wanting to do drugs. That's what he told me. Well, it's a whole different presentation I can give on my beliefs on prescribing rights of doctors. I think there's an issue. I think until we crack down on doctors and their prescribing rights, then we're gonna continue to have a problem. Like I said, a whole nother presentation, that I can get into. I wanna kinda show you where we've been, where we are, and kinda where we're headed. So I've got some comparison slides up here. Y'all have heard of our drug roundups. We do our undercover buys about every year, 18 months. We go pick up all these people that we bought drugs from. In October 2009, we did Operation Orange Crush. We made a total of 20 arrests, 6 for powder cocaine, 2 for crack cocaine, 2 for meth. 10 people out of those 20 were selling prescription medications. So about 50% of the people we arrested were selling prescriptions. A year and a half later, in April of 2011, we did Operation Deadly Dose. Made a total of 47 arrests, and you can see how the numbers break down. 31 of those 47 were selling prescription medications, so we were at 66% of the people we arrested were selling prescription medications. Operation Blue Wave in July of last year, 40 total arrests, 24 selling prescription medications, so we dropped just a little bit, down to 60%. But in July and August of this past year, I'm talking about 3 and 4 months ago, we arrested so many people we had to break it down into 2 different operations because we couldn't arrest that many people in one day. So these are the numbers from that operation. Operation Lifesavers, Part 1 and Part 2. We arrested 108 people. Out of those 108, 95 of those 108 were selling prescription medications. That's 88% of the people we arrested in this last roundup were selling prescription medications. So you saw where we've been, you saw where we are now. We've got a prescription medication problem in our community. Back. This is just the undercover stuff we do. Our office also investigates theft of medications, prescription frauds, and pharmacy burglaries and robberies. So you throw all that in there, about 88% of our undercover work was dealing with prescription medications. The rest of those investigations are all dealing with prescription medications. There's 5 detectives and 1 full-time secretary in the narcotics division just in the Morristown Police Department, City of Morristown, not Hamlin County. So you're looking at those 6 people are dedicating about, I'd say somewhere between 92 to 95% of their time dealing with some type of prescription medication problem. And that's where we are. So let's look at the overdoses, okay? I think you'll find a lot of this information pretty interesting. In the whole state of Tennessee, in 1999, we had 342 overdose deaths. All the people that died in the whole state of Tennessee in 99, 342 were overdose deaths. 12 years later, in 2011, we went from 342 to 1,062. Almost triple in that 12-year period. So, let's look at Hamlin County now. Just in Hamlin County, 1991 we had 2 deaths. 94 we had 2 overdose deaths. We had deaths in all those other years too. I kind of picked years out to show you. 2003 we had a big jump to 20. That's when OxyContin first became available. It's when we were having a lot of OxyContin, the actual brand name OxyContin overdose. We jumped up to 53 in 2010, 46 in 2011, and as of Halloween last year, we were at 42. So, big problem with overdose deaths. Let me add that these overdoses are not intentional. They're not suicide. 99% of them are accidental. You got added, that just took 1 too many people. Is what happens. Or combined a drug. A lot of them combine drugs as well, which have proven deadly. Hamlin County, I apologize for the numbers, but those were the most recent available. Those are how old they are. I'm going to look at 10-year comparison. In 1999, In Hamlin County, 556 people died. That's old age or natural causes, car wrecks, cancer, heart attack, stroke. Everybody that died in 1999 in Hamlin County, there were 556 deaths. 11 of them were overdose deaths. That put us at almost 2% of those 556 people died in 99 of an overdose. 10 years later, in 2009, 644 total deaths. But we went from 11 overdoses to 48. That jumped us from almost 2% to almost 7.5% of the people that died in Hamlin County in 2009 died from a drug overdose. Let me give you another statistic. With these statistics the way they are, 7.5% approximately are overdoses. If you are under the age of 65 and live in Hamlin County, you're more likely to die of a drug overdose than anything else. So that's where we've got to. This is the problem that we have. So let's talk about, anybody got any comments or questions about the prescription stuff?
What do you do without prescriptions? I know you can't throw them down the toilet anymore.
Oh, prescriptions, there's a box at the Hamlin County Sheriff's Office where you get the drop box, you can drop them in there, and then they get disposed of properly. They get incinerated.
Also look for, up at Walmart, they call Operation
Yes.
Hamlin Heat.
Take back and all that.
Yeah.
They do that about once every, I think it's once a quarter maybe. They do it at Walmart as well. Let's talk about some of the consequences of becoming, of using, abusing, or becoming addicted to all of these drugs that we've talked about today. Of course, number one and foremost is loss of life. You know, you could loss of family. I don't know how many people I've talked to and dealt with that have lost custody of their children. I've talked to moms and dads that have said, I'm done with my son, my daughter. I've bailed them out of jail too many times. I've let them stay at the house. We didn't have anywhere else to stay. I've given them money, and I know they went and bought drugs with it. I'm done with it. I see that a lot. Grandparents are the same way. So you've got a lot to lose. Loss of freedom. You can go to jail. From the things we're talking about in state court, you go to jail anywhere from 0 to 25 years, depending on what you've got. That doesn't count federal court. Federal court's going to be a lot worse. And of course, loss of job or career, or never getting one in the first place. Some of the monetary consequences, just monetarily, that you're looking at, like we've already said, loss of job or career or never getting one. Attorney's fees on a first offense DUI is $2,000. And I talked to a few different attorneys in town. I kind of asked them, took their numbers and averaged them out. So you're looking around $2,000 for an attorney. You're looking at $500 to $5,000 on a drug charge, depending on what the charge is. Court costs, fines, and fees. You're looking at $450 for a first offense DUI. It goes up from there. $325 to $3,000 fine on most of your drug charges in state court. I didn't know this until I was researching for this presentation, but I didn't realize that if you go to jail, you actually have to pay Hamlin County Jail $15 a day to be there. So not only are you locked up and lose your freedom, you have to pay them $15 a day. Somebody's got to pay for the food, the electricity, all that stuff. Yes, sir.
In Jeff County, it's $20 a day.
20. Jeff County's $20 a day. Probation, once you get out of jail, you've got $45 a month probation fees, but you've also got all these court costs, fines, attorney's fees that you're building up. You probably set payments up. Guess what happens if you can't make the payments? Violation of probation, you go back to jail. You can't pay it, you spend it in jail. All this stuff can lead to your loss of your home, family, vehicle, credit status, all that stuff. And we're almost done. I'll let y'all get to lunch. Bear with me here, and I want to really put things into perspective right here with this story I'm going to tell you. Some of you may know the people that I'm talking about. I don't mention any names or anything like that. This is here in Hamlin County. This story deals with a 25-year-old female, a 38-year-old male who's her boyfriend, a 5-day-old child, not 5-month-old, not 5-year-old, 5 days old, this child is, and prescription medication. You have a 25-year-old female that's addicted to pain-relieving medications who gets pregnant. What happens when an addicted person has a baby? Baby's addicted. The babies sometimes die, or they have to spend multiple weeks or months in the hospital getting through the withdrawals before that they have gotten all that out of their system and are functioning normal. This is probably a good point to go ahead and add right now. About approximately 50% of all the babies born at Morristown Hamlin Hospital are born addicted. Right now. 50% happen. But this female goes to have her baby, and she has to have it by cesarean or C-section, so she gets cut open. Well, obviously, when you get cut open, it's going to hurt, and there's going to be pain, cutting nerves and tissue and all that. So she was obviously prescribed some pain-relieving narcotics for that. The problem was where she was already addicted and had a high tolerance to pain-relieving medications. It just wasn't quite enough to get rid of the pain. So she's texting her boyfriend, and she's talking about all this pain she's in. And he says, honey, he gets a, and I put in quotations, legitimate prescription for Opana. He gets a prescription from a doctor. He goes to a pharmacy and fills it. I don't think he needs it personally, but I'm not a doctor. But he does get a prescription, a valid prescription from a doctor. He says, honey, come see me. I've got some moons. I don't want you to be in pain. I love you. Please just come see me, and I'll make sure you're not hurting anymore. So she does. We go back to our definition of addiction. Brain disease that causes behavior with consequences, harmful consequences, not only to the addicted person, but those around him or her. And we talked about brain development and decision making. So she makes a decision to go see her boyfriend so that she can get some Opana so that she doesn't hurt as much. She knows she's already taken this other stuff. She knows she's pretty well addicted already, but she makes a decision to take some more. So she goes and sees him. He provides her with some medication. About 5 hours later, you have a 25-year-old female who's dead. The 38-year-old boyfriend has been charged with second-degree murder. He didn't put a gun to her head and pull the trigger. He provided her that medication that took her life. He's responsible for her death. He'll never admit it. I've talked to him before. I've interviewed him a couple of times. He'll never admit it, but he's responsible for her death. And he has to pay the consequences. You have a 5-day-old child that has lost a mother and will never have a mother its entire life. You've got parents who have lost their child. You've got brothers and sisters who have lost a sibling. You've got aunts and uncles, cousins, and countless friends of this person who have lost someone that they knew and loved. Yet the 38-year-old male has to live with that responsibility, but he's ruined more than just one life, he's ruined his own life as well. He's gonna have to spend some time in prison. You don't really make a huge comeback from second-degree murder charge most of the time. Hopefully he can do something good with it, but he's definitely impacted the rest of his life. For his decision to provide that medication to his girlfriend. And all of this is because of drugs and addiction. So, I kind of took everything that we've already talked about this morning and put it into this one story. A show about addiction, decision-making, and prescription medication. So I hope that it kind of puts things into perspective. In closing, nobody knows how alcohol or drugs are going to affect them. Like I said, each and every one of us are different. We metabolize, our bodies metabolize and react to things we put in our bodies different. And you just never know how your body's going to react. It may not be, you may not have any long-term adverse effects that you realize, and then you could die as well on the first time putting something in your body, so you just don't know. Again, the human brain develops into the 20s. That introduction of those chemicals can have a extreme effect on development, learning ability, and decision-making, most important. A person's drug abuse and addiction not only affects that person, but family and friends and everybody that knows that person as well. Drug use and abuse can cause loss of a job or prevent you from ever securing a job as well. Drug use and abuse increases your risk of committing and being a victim of violent crime. It can lead to numerous significant health issues. I mean, we haven't even talked about the cancers and all the different disorders and nervous disorders and brain disorders and all that. We've talked mostly about death. We've not even talked about a lot of the other health-related issues that can occur. And the biggest thing is stay in control of your future by staying drug and alcohol free. These are some additional resources where a lot of this information came from. These are really good websites to get information about drugs and addiction. I want to ask one question before I wrap it up, and that is, how many people in this room have been affected by addiction in some way, shape, or form of yourself or a close family or friend?
I've got a brother.
I always, in every presentation I give, I can say that there's at least 50% of the people in the room have been somehow affected by addiction. Hopefully it's not been the loss of a life, the loss of a loved one, but I'm sure that some of them are. But addiction has gotten a grasp on our society right now, and the addiction I see with pain medication seems to be 100 times more powerful than cocaine or marijuana or anything like that I've seen. I can't explain it. I don't know why. I'm sure it's a chemical thing. It's the chemistry of it all. But the director of the Tennessee Methamphetamine and Pharmaceutical Task Force told me this about a year ago, and it kind of stuck with me. But he said this to me. He said, you know, as a society, we're on the verge of losing an entire generation. And we're going to lose that generation to addiction. But the problem is it's not just the addiction of drugs and alcohol, it's the addiction of money. And believe you me, like I said, it's a different presentation. I don't get into it a lot in this presentation, but this addiction of prescription medication is money driven. It's money driven. So I really appreciate your attention. I hope that you learned something. I hope something is useful to you as you go out and take them back home to your families and whatnot. Is there any other questions or comments before we close out? I'll stick around for a few minutes. And there'll be some papers out over here on this table I'll put out. Please grab some of those, are in those boxes over there. They got some information on them. Those were paid for by the grant that we got, so please pick those up. Again, I appreciate your time and attention, and I really hope that you find some of this information useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, half hour.